The guests filled the hall with quiet excitement as music floated softly through the speakers. It was the kind of wedding that made everyone whisper, not because of the decorations or the food, but because of who was getting married. Every eye sparkled with curiosity, waiting to see how the day would unfold. Outside the hall, a young woman stood still for a long moment, her hand resting lightly on the rusted gate. Her clothes hung loosely on her frame, faded and worn. She looked like someone who had seen too much and said too little. That woman was a marker. 3 years ago, she was the one everyone thought would be the bride. She had loved Chaik with all her heart, the kind of love that made her believe promises and see forever in a man's eyes. But forever didn't last long. Chaik left her without a word, without closure, without explanation. The last thing he said to her was, "You deserve better." She had smiled, not knowing that better meant he'd already chosen someone else. Now she was here, standing in front of the same man's wedding gate, holding her invitation like a wound that refused to heal. She had almost thrown the invitation away when it arrived. Her mother had begged her not to go, her best friend had warned her she'd only reopen old scars, but a marker couldn't stay away. Something in her heart needed to face this, to see the man who had broken her spirit and left her to pick up the pieces. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked through the gate. Heads turned instantly. Conversations paused. Some people looked away politely, others stared without shame. She could hear the whispers before she even reached the entrance. "Is that a marker? Why did she come dressed like that? She looks so different. What happened to her?" Her shoes were scuffed, her dress simple and faded, but her face carried a quiet strength that silenced those who stared too long. She didn't come to impress anyone. She came because her heart needed peace. Inside, the hall glittered with soft lights. The bride, Aisha, was radiant, her laughter delicate and bright. Chaik stood beside her, tall and confident, his smile the same one that once melted Amarka's fears. He looked happy, or maybe he was pretending. When Amarka walked in, his smile froze for a second. His fingers tightened around Aisha's hand. He didn't expect her to come. Not dressed like that. Not looking like a memory he wanted to forget but couldn't. Their eyes met, just for a moment. And in that moment, time seemed to slow. The noise faded. The music dimmed. Every emotion he thought he had buried came rushing back. Amarka looked away quickly and took a seat at the far corner of the hall. She didn't want to cause a scene. She didn't want pity. She just wanted to feel free. But Chaik couldn't stop glancing in her direction. Every laugh he gave seemed forced. Every smile faded too quickly. Aisha noticed. She followed his gaze once, then twice, and when she saw where it landed, her expression changed slightly. Not anger, just unease. As the ceremony went on, Amarka kept her eyes on the floor, pretending to listen. But her mind was far away, lost in memories of laughter, of promises whispered under moonlight, of plans that never came true. She remembered how they used to dream of a small house, how they wanted to start a business together, how he once told her she made him believe in destiny. And now destiny had chosen someone else for him. The priest asked Chaik to say his vows. He began to speak, his voice steady, but something in his tone cracked when he glanced at the crowd and saw Amarka again. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. She just sat still, her face calm, her eyes distant. But deep down, her heart trembled. When everyone stood up to clap, Amarka quietly slipped out. She needed air. The moment she stepped outside, a wave of relief washed over her, mixed with pain she couldn't hide. She leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. She told herself she was fine. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't turn around, but she knew who it was. "Amarka," Chaik's voice called softly. She froze. He walked closer, each step heavier than the last. "I didn't expect you to come," he said. "I shouldn't have," she replied quietly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of music from inside the hall drifted between them like a reminder of what was lost. "You look," he started, but stopped. He couldn't find the right word. Amaka gave a small smile. Don't. You don't owe me anything. Chaik's eyes softened. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, she said simply. And maybe that's how it was meant to be. He looked down, guilt written all over his face. She turned to leave, but before she did, she added quietly, Congratulations, Chaik. I hope she gives you everything I couldn't. She walked away, leaving him standing there, torn between the life he had chosen and the love he had lost. He watched her go until she disappeared beyond the gate. Inside, Aurora called his name, her voice filled with joy, unaware of the storm in his heart. But Chaik's eyes remained fixed on the empty path where Amaka had walked away. And for the first time that day, the man who had everything felt like he had lost something he would never find again. The night after the wedding, Amaka couldn't sleep. She had replayed every second of that day in her mind until her thoughts became too heavy to bear. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling of her small one-room apartment in Enugu. The ceiling fan made a faint clicking sound as it turned lazily, slicing through the silence. Her phone kept lighting up with messages, mostly from friends who had seen her at the wedding. Some praised her courage, some asked if she was okay, and a few just wanted gossip. She ignored them all. She didn't go there to prove anything. She went to face what was haunting her. And now that it was done, she didn't know what came next. Her heart felt strange, not empty, not broken, just quiet. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm. But deep down, she knew something had changed in her. Something that couldn't be undone. As she sat up, her eyes landed on a small framed photo on the table. Her and Chaik back in university, both wearing silly grins, holding hands like the world belonged to them. She reached for it, stared for a long time, then placed it face down. She was done crying over him. The next morning, Amaka wore her best pair of jeans, slightly faded but clean, and a simple blouse. She tied her hair in a bun, looked at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, said softly, "You'll be fine." She had spent too long living in shadows, afraid of what people would say. It was time to start living again. She stepped out into the morning light, carrying her small handbag. The streets were alive with the sound of vendors calling out prices, buses honking, and people rushing to work. She walked briskly to the roadside shop where she worked, a small beauty supply store owned by Mama Efima, a cheerful woman who treated her like family. The bell above the shop door jingled as she entered. "Amaka!" Mama Efima exclaimed with her usual warmth. "You look bright this morning. What happened?" Amaka smiled faintly. "Nothing. Just decided to stop feeling sorry for myself." Mama Efima laughed, shaking her head. "That's the spirit. Heartbreak no suppose kill person." They both laughed. It felt good. Throughout the day, Amaka worked with quiet focus, arranging shelves, attending to customers, and managing receipts. She didn't think of Chaik, not consciously at least. But every now and then, she'd catch herself wondering if he had noticed how calm she looked when he saw her leave. What she didn't know was that Chaik had spent his honeymoon night thinking about her. The wedding had ended perfectly in everyone's eyes. Pictures were taken, music played, and guests danced late into the night. But behind Chaik's polite smile was confusion. He should have felt happy. Aurora was kind, beautiful, and adored him. Yet, when he looked at her, he couldn't shake off the image of Amaka sitting quietly in that corner, wearing her old dress, looking both fragile and unbreakable. That image haunted him. Days passed. Aurora noticed his distraction but tried to ignore it. "You're just tired," she said once, rubbing his shoulder gently. "Everything will settle soon." He nodded, but he knew it wasn't just tiredness. It was guilt. He remembered the day he left Amaka. He had just gotten a job in Abuja, and everyone around him told him he needed a wife who fit his new level. Amaka was still trying to finish school, struggling with bills, always talking about dreams that felt too far away. He convinced himself she'd hold him back. But now, with all the success, the money, the respect, he felt something missing. Peace. One afternoon, while Aurora was at work, Chike sat in his car parked near a quiet cafe. His mind wandered until he found himself scrolling through his old photos. He paused at one of Amaka, her head thrown back in laughter, eyes full of life. He remembered taking that photo at a roadside suya joint. She had insisted they go there after church, saying the suya man's pepper mix could cure sadness. He smiled faintly, then sighed. He wondered if she was okay. Meanwhile, Amaka was rebuilding her routine. She had started saving small amounts from her salary. Her goal was to open her own small skincare line, something she had dreamed of since university. She began mixing organic products in little containers at home, labeling them by hand. Every evening, she tested new mixtures, wrote ideas in her notebook, and imagined what her brand could become. One day, a young woman who lived nearby stopped by her door. "Amaka, your cream day work oh. My skin no rough again. You fit make another one for me." Amaka's face lit up. "Really? You liked it?" "Liked it. I love 'em. Beg, how much for another one?" That small moment made her heart flutter. For the first time in years, she felt proud of something she built on her own. Word spread quickly. Neighbors started buying. Then people from nearby streets came asking. Within weeks, her little apartment became a mini production space. Her confidence grew. She began to smile more, talk more, laugh again. But fate wasn't done with her story. One afternoon, while she was arranging her products on a small wooden table outside, a sleek black car stopped nearby. The tinted window rolled down slowly. Her heart skipped when she saw who it was. Chike. He stepped out, wearing a crisp white shirt, the same easy smile that once melted her heart. For a second, she couldn't breathe. "Amaka," he said quietly. She wiped her hands on her apron, forcing a calm tone. "Chike, what are you doing here?" He looked around, taking in her small setup, the neat rows of jars, the handwritten labels. "You made all these?" "Yes," she said. "Why are you here?" He hesitated. "I was passing through. I just wanted to see you." She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "You've seen me. You can go now." "Please," he said softly, his voice almost breaking. "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." Amaka wanted to say no, but her curiosity held her still. "Fine. Talk." He took a slow breath. "I'm sorry for how things ended between us. I thought I was doing the right thing. I told myself I was protecting you from disappointment, but I realize now I was just protecting myself." She stared at him, her chest tight. "You think sorry fixes everything?" "No," he said quickly. "It doesn't. I just needed you to know I never stopped caring." Amaka's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're married, Chike. Whatever you think you feel, keep it to yourself. I've moved on." He swallowed hard. "Are you happy?" She met his eyes, her voice calm but firm. "Yes. Happier than I've been in a long time." It wasn't entirely true yet, but saying it out loud made it feel closer to becoming true. Chike looked down, guilt clouding his face. "I deserve that," he said quietly. "I just hope one day you'll forgive me." Amaka nodded slightly. "Maybe. But not today." He gave a weak smile, then turned to leave. As he got back into his car, Amaka felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, pride, and something softer she refused to name. When the car drove away, she exhaled slowly, her hands trembling. But inside her chest, something settled. That was closure, not the kind that came from words, but from realizing she didn't need him anymore to feel whole. That evening, she sat by her window with a cup of tea, watching the street lights flicker on. For the first time, she didn't think about what she'd lost. She thought about what was ahead, her business, her peace, her life. And somewhere in the distance, as night fell gently over the city, it felt like the universe whispered, this is just the beginning. Weeks rolled into months, and life began to take a different shape for Amaka. What started as a few jars of homemade skincare had now turned into something much bigger than she ever imagined. Her neighbors had become loyal customers, and word had spread beyond her street. People came from different parts of town asking for that girl's magic cream. Her small table outside her apartment was no longer enough. She rented a tiny shop near the main road, freshly painted white, with a handwritten sign above it that said Amaka Glow. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Every shelf, every label, every detail carried her effort and her story. When she opened the shop officially, she didn't make any announcements. She simply arranged her products neatly, swept the floor, and stood behind the counter with quiet pride. People started pouring in. Young girls who wanted smooth skin, working women tired of fake beauty products, even older women who said they'd heard about her from their daughters. Each sale, no matter how small, filled Amaka's chest with warmth. One day, a woman who introduced herself as a content creator walked in, bought some creams, and asked if she could post about Amaka Glow online. Amaka hesitated at first, but later agreed. Within a week, the video went viral. Orders started coming in faster than she could pack them. She could barely keep up. Mama Ifema helped. So did a few of the girls from the neighborhood. They worked together, laughing, sweating, singing along to music from a small radio. Every jar that left her shop carried a piece of her heart. But with growth came challenges. Suppliers delayed deliveries, rent went up, and sometimes customers complained. Yet Amaka didn't let it break her. She reminded herself that she had been through worse: heartbreak, betrayal, loneliness, and she survived. This was nothing compared to that. Every night after closing, she would sit in the empty shop, counting her earnings and whispering to herself, "Thank you." It wasn't about money. It was about peace. About becoming someone she once thought she couldn't be without Chike. Still, there were moments she caught herself wondering where he was, how he was doing. Not because she missed him, but because some memories never truly fade, they just soften over time. Then one afternoon, as she was sealing her latest batch of orders, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello. Good afternoon. Is this Miss Amaka?" "Yes, please. Who's speaking?" "This is from Urban Beauty Group. We came across your products online. Our director would love to discuss a possible partnership with you." Amaka froze, gripping the phone tighter. "I'm sorry, did you say partnership?" "Yes, We believe your brand has great potential. Could you visit our office in Lagos next week?" Her heart raced. She had never traveled for business before. Everything she built had happened right there in her community. The thought of stepping into something that big scared her, but it also thrilled her. After the call ended, she sat down slowly, her mind spinning. It felt unreal. She remembered the girl who once stood outside a wedding gate in rags, uncertain of her worth, and now here she was, being called for a business partnership. She smiled to herself, eyes glistening. "God, you really didn't forget me," she whispered. The next week, she boarded a bus to Lagos. She wore a simple but smart outfit, her hair neatly packed, and her samples carefully arranged in a small bag. The journey was long, but her mind was filled with quiet excitement. When she arrived at the company's office, she was welcomed warmly. The director, a confident woman in her 40s, greeted her with a smile. "We've seen the buzz around your products," the woman said. "People love that they're natural and handmade. We want to help you take it to the next level: branding, packaging, distribution." Amaka listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes, her heart swelling with gratitude. The meeting went well. They offered to partner with her to mass-produce her products while she remained the creative lead. By the time she left the office, the Lagos sun was blazing, but she didn't mind. She stood at the roadside, clutching her bag, her face glowing with tears she couldn't hold back. Everything she had prayed for was beginning to unfold. Back in Enugu, when she told Mama Ifema and the girls about it, they screamed and danced. The joy was contagious. Her business took off faster than she expected. Her products hit supermarket shelves. Social media influencers mentioned her brand. Her story, from heartbreak to success, began inspiring others. She even started getting messages from women saying her story gave them courage to chase their dreams after broken relationships. But one day, an unexpected message appeared on her phone. It was from Chaik. "I saw your story online. I'm proud of you. Can we talk?" Amaka stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to feel. There was no anger, just surprise. She typed a short reply. "Thank you, Chaik. I'm doing well. I hope you are too." He replied within minutes. "I am. But I'd like to see you, if that's okay." She hesitated. Part of her wanted to ignore him, but another part, the part that had already healed, saw no harm in closure that didn't hurt anymore. A few days later, they met at a small cafe. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't emotional. It was calm. Chaik looked older, wiser, but his eyes carried regret. "You've changed," he said softly. "I had to," Amaka replied, stirring her drink. "Pain will either destroy you or teach you. I chose to learn." He smiled faintly. "Ada and I, we separated. It wasn't working." Amaka looked at him, her face gentle but firm. "I'm sorry to hear that. But I hope you find peace." He nodded slowly. "You already have, haven't you?" She smiled. "Yes. And that's enough." There was silence between them, not heavy, just peaceful. They talked a little longer about life, work, and old times. When they stood to leave, he reached out his hand. "I'll always be proud of you," he said. "Thank you," she replied. "But I'm proud of me too." They parted ways quietly. That evening, as Amaka drove back home, she rolled down her window, letting the cool air hit her face. She thought about how strange life could be, how pain could become purpose, how endings could lead to beginnings. When she got home, her shop lights glowed softly in the dusk. She walked inside, running her hand over the shelves, remembering every moment that led her here. She smiled to herself. She didn't need anyone's validation anymore. She had rebuilt herself from pieces that once felt too broken to mend. And as she sat by her counter, writing down new product ideas, her phone buzzed again, another large order. She laughed quietly, her heart full. Outside, children ran past her shop, their laughter echoing in the evening air. Across the street, someone called out, "Amake glow don blow o." Amaka chuckled and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Her story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about rediscovering herself, about finding light where darkness once lived. And though she wore rags to her ex's wedding, she left that place wearing something far more powerful, dignity. Now, the whole world could see it shining in everything she touched. What a powerful story of grace, strength, and becoming. Amaka's journey reminds us that sometimes, what looks like the end is really just the beginning of something beautiful. She walked into her past wearing pain, but walked out wearing peace. From heartbreak to healing, from rags to recognition, she proved that no one can dim a light meant to shine. If you felt every moment of Amaka's story, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next emotional tale. Drop a comment below telling us the country you're watching from and what your time says right now. We'd love to see how far this story travels across the world. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, the next one will move you even deeper.